On the outskirts of the capital of the Atlán Empire stood the small mansion of Baron Pales. A young woman with black hair clung to the window of the top floor, watching a carriage arrive. From the carriage, stopped in front of the entrance, imposing ladies began to descend. Casting looks of contempt at the house, a maid hurried to inform Lady Luna that she had unexpected visitors. It is true that these ladies disconcerted the maid a little with their attitude. But the heroine thought everything was fine. Deciding to go out to receive them, Luna remembered that all this time she had been wondering. When would they arrive? Finally, that moment had arrived, and the young woman calmly walked out onto the street, where they were already waiting for her. Advancing, Lady Florist decided that since the heroine did not appear, they themselves had decided to visit her. The guests wanted to speak with Lady Luna Pales, the Baroness and secondary villain of this novel. Responding to them with a cold look, the heroine thought that, indeed, it had been a long time since they had seen each other. But before starting the conversation, she invited all the girls inside the mansion. After this, with an elegant turn, Luna headed to the entrance. Today this impudence ends. Following the protagonist through the long corridors, the ladies did not miss an opportunity to criticize the old house. Flora's friends thought that not renouncing the title. In that situation, it was a disgrace to the nobility. With a smile, the lady reprimanded them. Don't be like that. Luna desperately tries to save her family. And that's why she shamelessly flirts with Duke Rodrian, acting so shamelessly. And indecently. Trying to hurt the protagonist, they only managed to confuse her. Did they really see her as that naive? Apparently, these ladies no longer hide their true intentions and show their true colors. It was too obvious that their visit had nothing to do with a social conversation. Luna, better than anyone, knew the real reason for the sudden visit. These nobles only wanted to rip out the heroine's hair and show her her place. And all because the heir to the ducal family, Person Rodrian, was her childhood friend. Luna hated that idiot because precisely because of him, she had all her problems. The girl was born into the family of Baron Pales, known throughout the empire for its poverty. Because there weren't even enough candles in the hallway, the little heroine stumbled and fell often. But at that very moment, the doors burst open and the parents rushed out with the servants. Carefully lifting her little daughter, the mother sincerely hoped that everything was fine with her. Everyone tried to calm the little one, and the woman lovingly carried her to her room. Thanks to attentive parents and kind maids, even without money, she was never unhappy. However, childhood happiness did not last long, and major changes occurred in Luna's life. It all began the day she debuted in society, presenting herself to the nobility. Seeing her old dress, the aristocrats moved away in disdain. Not even commoners would wear that. Rumors of her terrible character spread, and they criticized her behind her back. She had to maintain dignity despite the poverty. They looked at her with disdain, and many nobles felt sorry for Baron Pales to have such a daughter. Meanwhile, Floris began spreading that Luna was obsessed with her childhood friend. Duke Rodrian, the protagonist's mockery and reproaches, considered too haughty, resounded everywhere. At first, the humiliating and unfounded rumors only spread about her. But in the end, their wickedness spread to the entire family. Later, in the Pales mansion, a fire of unknown origin caused burns to many servants. Furthermore, the only carriage was destroyed, and the horse poisoned with toxic plants. Misfortunes began to occur one after another in the life of the young woman and her family. But Luna knew that none of this was accidental. And why did they do it? What did she and her family do to deserve so much suffering? One day, the protagonist was in her room when, suddenly, a maid entered with a worried face. In her hand, she held a letter for her lady, which the maid wanted to deliver to her. Upon hearing that the content of the letter was somewhat strange, Luna became very alert. Upon opening it, the heroine read with horror that if she did not stay away from Person, death awaited her. Not only was the message terrifying, but it was written in blood. The protagonist was so shocked that a forgotten memory surfaced in her mind. She was Luna Pales, blindly obsessed with her childhood friend and the protagonist of this novel. Person Rodrian, and she was destined to die as a secondary character without saying a word. She was reborn as the villain of this story, whose fate was tragic. At least, that explained why those ladies were harassing her. Basically, according to Luna's memories, the reason these ladies bothered her boiled down to this. She was the protagonist of the novel, named Sarah Granada, Rodrian's girl and the object of the villain's envy. Lady Flores and her friends cared a lot about Sarah and couldn't stand Luna tormenting her. In the end, they even murdered the villain, disguising it as an accidental death so that she would not interfere in the relationship of the protagonists. And now, sitting across from them with a cup of tea, the heroine thought that in the original story Luna was the evil one, and she deserved her end. However, now everything was different, and the girl was irritated by how these ladies kept threatening her, demanding that she stop intimidating the Duke. Tired of listening to their endless chatter, Luna simply agreed with them. Nothing more. Astonished by what they heard, they fell silent immediately, and the heroine decided to clarify the situation. As for him, he was completely indifferent to her due to the bad relationship they had as children. Seeing the distrust in Floris's eyes, Luna shouted loudly. That piece of trash didn't interest her at all. Hearing such words directed at the honorable Duke, the noble ladies were completely taken aback. They decided that not only was she insolent and a liar, but she also dared to insult person. They would tell him everything. Calmly accepting that they would tell the hero everything, Luna still wanted to add something else. She decided that, instead of meeting person, it would be much better to find someone else. For example, a ruthless psychopath feared by the entire imperial elite, previously called Vincent. Just hearing his name and the heroine's declaration, the girls turned pale with horror and confusion. Leaving them in deep confusion, Luna calmly left the room, telling the maid that the guests were leaving. Grinding her teeth in anger, Floris thought that girl was completely crazy. Going up the stairs, the heroine could still hear the ladies' shouts, calling her an arrogant liar. Bursting into her room, Luna was also indignant to the core. Determined to put an end to this madness once, and for all, the heroine thought there was only one solution. If the noble Duke were a little smarter, this surely wouldn't have happened. The girl wasn't interested in the protagonists like Person Rodrian, not even as a gift. She wrote him a letter expressing that idea, and adding that he should forget all his childhood friends. After reading in the letter that they were nothing anymore and that Luna was breaking off the relationship, the Duke didn't understand why she was doing this to him. After sending such a letter, the heroine hoped there would be no more visits. At the same time, it was obvious that the despotism of those girls would hardly cease. All because she and Sarah were too different, and the girl was everyone's favorite. The main heroine. While Luna was the villain hated by everyone, even without objective reason. And if she has to live like this for the rest of her life, only a special scroll in the heroine's room could help her. In it was hidden the possibility of obtaining a lot of money that, she thought, would make her happy. If she had had this scroll earlier, everything would have been much easier. Considering this very important, Luna burned with the desire to share it with her father. Leaving her room in a good mood, the heroine yawned sweetly and suddenly discovered someone nearby. Looking closer and realizing who it was, the girl's good mood vanished instantly. His dark hair carelessly covered the languid gaze of the hero, who was heading in an unknown direction. However, upon hearing Luna and turning towards her, a childlike smile lit up the Duke's face. In turn, the heroine's face distorted with shock and horror, not understanding how he had gotten there. Person was standing, smiling kindly, while Luna was stunned by his arrival. The protagonist did not understand. Did the ladies from yesterday not convey the words she told them? Shouting at him furiously, the young woman wanted to know why he had come. Hadn't she made it clear that he shouldn't? Not immediately, but the hero finally understood that it was about the letter she had sent. Laughing cheerfully, he thought the joke had been very funny and that Luna had a talent for mischief. While he applauded her amidst laughter, Luna opened her eyes in astonishment and felt second-hand embarrassment wash over her from head to toe. She knew he was quite foolish, but it turned out that the book didn't say half of what his intellect really was. Since that unimaginable encounter, the protagonist tried her best to stay away from the Duke. However, all her efforts were in vain, and the hero, constantly and by some miracle, always appeared nearby. And what is worse, he didn't see it as harassment, but as a game of hide-and-seek, which irritated Luna even more. Once, she even received a flower thrown in her face, but she took it as a beautiful gift from her childhood friend. After all she had suffered, the heroine accumulated doubts and reproaches towards the author of the novel. What was wrong with the protagonist? Once again, running into her in her own home, Person decided to take an interest in her well-being. Luna was just about to tell him to get lost. Her father appeared, happy that his daughter knew the Duke. Horrified to learn that the Baron had invited Rodrian, the girl saw the hero run to greet her father with joy. Returning the greeting, the man was glad that his daughter's only friend was visiting their home. Seeing them shake hands and hearing their compliments, the heroine got the chills. The Baron had a very affable character, and unlike Luna, enjoyed a good reputation in society. He was a truly good person, with whom no one had had major conflicts. But the father's biggest flaws were his naivety and inability in business, which made him vulnerable to scams. As for his daughter and the Duke, he assumed it was a simple misunderstanding. The Baron never dreamed of running the family business and now managed documents at the Persane mansion. He couldn't do anything about his father's weakness, similar to that of his boss's son. Luna already had a headache because of this idiot, hoping the Baron would think about his daughter's future. Upon hearing that the Duke would take him home by carriage that night, she felt great confusion. Not understanding anything, she heard Person say that the Baron would accompany him to work today. Therefore, the Duke expected to see the protagonist at dinner that night. Waving goodbye, he decided that he would definitely buy her a dessert cake. That was the last straw, after which Luna completely lost her temper. So she basically completely ignored his declaration about breaking off their friendship. With her fists clenched in fury, the heroine called a maid named Lola. Luna decided that they would have a special guest at dinner tonight, so they should prepare one more place setting. In the evening, as planned, the Duke was kind enough to stay for the family meal. Smiling, the hero thought this house felt so cozy and comfortable that he would even want to stay the night. The Baron loved the idea, as he had no idea how many insults his daughter had received because of that man. However, the father was very surprised that there was a place setting that no one was using. Just then, a servant came running, eager to announce the arrival of a very special guest. Happy that she arrived just in time, Luna got up from her seat, which left Person completely confused. Along with the Baron, they had no idea who the guest was. Looking back with a smile before letting the girl in, the heroine thought it was someone the Duke would be happy to see. At that moment, Lady Seta gracefully entered the dining room, greeting Person cheerfully. Afterwards, with everyone seated at the table, the Duke remembered that the guest did not eat cakes due to an allergy. He deeply regretted that she could not enjoy the dessert, but now there was no solution. At the same time, he considered it very opportune that Lady Luna did eat cakes, thus showing a great lack of tact. Admitting that Sarah was truly amazing, the heroine didn't understand how she could have fallen in love with such an idiot. If she weren't the protagonist with an angelic character, Person probably wouldn't have a happy ending. Thinking about how saintly she was, Luna didn't hear that the Duke had called her several times. Suddenly, he shouted very loudly, which made the girl tremble from head to toe. The hero decided that something strange had happened since she sent him a letter yesterday. He didn't understand. Did she have problems she couldn't reveal even to her friend? So today, Person wanted to spend the night there and listen to all of Luna's sorrows. Although it would take him all night, Sarah gave him a stunned look, while the protagonist was in shock. Enraged, she began to shout furiously, demanding that he stop talking nonsense immediately. Furthermore, he should think a little. Would he really leave this lady alone, in the middle of the dark night? However, the Duke saw no problems, as Sarah had arrived with servants and knights. At that moment, the girl was already trembling with boiling indignation. And meanwhile, Person decided to ask her if she agreed. Luna wanted to scream again. But at that very moment, Sarah couldn't take it anymore and stood up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. The young woman was red with anger, and her eyes shone with the tears flooding them. Completely unexpected this turn, the protagonist was plunged into total confusion. Turning around abruptly, Lady Granada began to walk away, and the protagonist hurried to follow her. Sarah's pace was so fast that Luna could barely keep up running. Upon reaching the street and seeing the girl crying in the arms of her entourage, the heroine shouted, thinking that idiot would leave with her anyway. Furthermore, she wanted to apologize for today's incident, as no one knew everything would turn out this way. In response to this, the lady remembered that when she received the invitation, her friends warned her not to go. They believed that Luna Palesa could not invite her with good intentions, and now Sarah was seeing it for herself. Shouting furiously at the heroine, the girl decided that she didn't just want person, but also to hurt her. After this, the lady approached Luna and hit her hard in the face, with the hand holding a wad of bills, making them all fly. Sarah continued shouting, wishing the heroine would stop interfering in her relationship with the Duke. She was willing to pay any amount, just for Luna to simply take it and disappear. At that very moment, the terrified hero came running and ran with all his might to the heroine's aid. Before Lady Granada's astonished gaze, he comforted Luna. Believing she was very scared, completely beside herself, the protagonist severely ordered him to stay away from her several times. But the Duke didn't listen. Then, pushing him towards Sarah, she shouted, demanding that everyone get out of there. Turning around and walking towards her house, Luna didn't understand. Why the hell did she have to go through all this? While Person didn't understand the reason for so much anger in the heroine, the lady sat on the floor looking at him stunned. From the beginning, Luna understood that the hero was just a child who understood nothing. But she didn't think Sarah was like that too. Of course, Lady Granada's frustration was understandable. But why ignore people like that? Despite being the kind protagonist, that didn't stop her from looking at the girl with contempt. Reaching her precious scroll, the protagonist firmly decided that they would never ignore her for money again. Some time later, a certain aristocrat shouted furiously at Auntie Vincent, accusing him of stealing part of his business. Coldly, the hero knew that this man was the last one who should utter such words. It was he who, without notifying Aunties, decided the size of the commissions. Upon learning the boss's reaction to the unfair contracts, the nobleman was dumbfounded. Looking at the hero furiously, he decided that everyone would regret this. Vincent, with a smile, didn't understand if he really planned to take revenge on the former leadership. Shivering upon hearing it, the man decided to postpone the conversation for now. Fleeing the office, thinking about taking action, he bumped into someone upon leaving. After cursing, the nobleman saw a mountain of muscles with an angry face. He almost had a heart attack. The stranger entered the office, and the terrified man flew out of there. Turning to Vincent, the big guy wanted to tell him that an important lady was looking for him. Upon hearing that it was Luna Palesa, the hero was completely bewildered. He didn't understand. Was someone related to that infamous Duke visiting him again? Deciding that everyone was arriving like flies today, he ordered her to be let in immediately. Some time before, the protagonist was traveling peacefully by cart through a beautiful forest. Sitting inside, she was absorbed looking out the window, thinking about what she should do. Furthermore, a long time had passed since she had last gone so far. The Palisk family has a title, of course. But in reality, Luna is always so busy that she has never had time to travel. However, now, the girl knew for sure that she would no longer live in poverty. Soon everything would change, thanks to the scroll she carried with her. That document gave her the right to acquire part of the Pilsa territory. And not long ago, behind her father's back, Luna acquired a part of the estate in her name. Since there are only rocky mountains, she can live on little money. But this place, which seems useless, holds a secret: gold mines. Of course, many miners will be needed, but that will be resolved. If it were like in the original story, they would never know about the gold and would live in misery. Later, the heroine arrived at the coordinates and found a building more imposing than expected. Just before, she was looking for a place to hire mercenaries to accompany her. Upon asking the horse seller, she learned that she should go to the building opposite the three-way intersection. And although it was a bit doubtful, Luna thought the place might even be better than she thought. Upon entering, she saw two muscular fighters and ran to talk to them. The heroine came to see the mercenary commander and expected these men to guide her. Taking the young woman's words as a joke, one thought she confused the place with a shop, and she should return quickly. But Luna insisted, clarifying that they recommended her to come here from the carriage rental. Refusing to seriously believe the heroine, the big guy still thought she was joking. And that was starting to irritate him. Crossing her arms with an unfriendly face, she decided she didn't like this at all. That is, how they treated customers differently, and now Luna understood the level of these mercenaries. Introducing herself and giving her name, the heroine decided that in the future she would be an important client. What if now the mercenaries lost profits due to their blindness? Would their commander like that? Looking furiously at the big guys, she hoped they would help her once and for all now. Shivering at her gaze, the mercenary notified the boss of the visit and then quickly led her to him. Encouraged, Luna knew that if she managed to hire someone, half the plan would already be ready. With the fixed idea of speaking with the mercenary boss, she entered the office determinedly. But not seeing anyone inside, she thought for an instant that the big guy had tricked her. Suddenly, the protagonist heard a male voice calling her from behind. Standing on the other side of the room, the boss wanted to know if the young lady wished to commission them for something. Upon seeing his golden curls and emerald eyes, Luna was captivated by his unreal beauty. With difficulty, she composed herself, knowing it wasn't the time for distractions. The heroine needed mercenaries to escort her to the territory of the Pale's mansion. Furthermore, she would have to stay there for a couple of days and work, and she wanted to pay in advance. Considering it was their first meeting, the Duke was surprised that she dared to ask him that. And even more so, if she had a rich and beloved Duke Rodrian, why had she made this whole trip? Plunged into confusion, Luna didn't understand why they still considered that idiot their beloved. She never imagined hearing something like that from someone she was meeting for the first time. And the most incredible thing is that, according to her, there wasn't a shred of truth in his words. The mercenary boss, alert, didn't understand what she meant. If the Duke did nothing but tell everyone about it. But the girl insisted, plunging the hero into even greater confusion. What madness! Luna decided that person was a raving lunatic, living in the illusion of pleasing everyone. He is just an evil child who dedicates himself to annoying everyone. How annoying! A guy who only thinks about what he likes is useless to her. Not even in her wildest dreams. The boss got the message. Despite the rumors, it seems the girl truly hated Duke Rodrian. The protagonist immediately nodded, wishing person would disappear from her sight forever. She hoped she had explained her position well to the hero. However, Luna already noticed that their conversation was going the wrong way. Aware that her request was unfounded, she decided to seek help elsewhere. And at that moment, to her surprise, the hero suddenly agreed to seal a pact with her. It turned out that the reason for his decision was that he felt a certain camaraderie with the lady. Now, his first intention was to introduce her to his mercenaries. At that moment, the soldiers were having a pleasant time in the dining room with a beer. But as soon as the commander entered, they all jumped up and greeted them respectfully. The hero was happy to introduce their new lady to them, and Luna greeted everyone shyly. The hero also decided to officially introduce his team to the young lady. Stepping forward, he was happy to welcome the new client at the former Apex. Paralyzed by surprise, the protagonist hoped she had misheard. At the mere thought that this place had something to do with the psychopath Vincent before, terror invaded her. This man is the cruelest villain in the novel, and the Apex was a place he sponsored. Moreover, it is rumored that he accepted bribes, so people have a very bad opinion of him. Realizing that she had come to this place alone, Luna could barely stand up out of fear. The boss decided she could feel at home. Meanwhile, the girl desperately tried to find an exit. Suddenly, a mountain of muscles sitting nearby, who had accompanied the heroine to the boss, saw the lady at the entrance. Running and bowing to her, the hero deeply regretted everything that had happened before. The boss was quite bewildered and didn't understand what was happening, but Luna pretended nothing was wrong. Yes, that big guy was rude at first, but she didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone. Astonished by her mercy, the mercenaries shouted in unison, ready to fulfill any wish of their mistress. With clenched fists, they believed that nothing was impossible and that the lady could fully trust them. Seeing their rough smiles and steel muscles, Luna thought, confused, that this was a bit overwhelming. The boss noticed the girl's bluish face, but apparently he was only worried if they would protect her well. Although they looked rough, they were official mercenaries, so there was no need to worry. Supposedly. Anyway, the heroine knew she couldn't afford anything else, so she just had to wait for everything to end. She firmly decided not to get involved with Antis anymore. But 3 hours later, something went terribly wrong. Beer flowed freely, and everyone toasted to the health of the respected lady. Lady Palesa. At that moment, Luna felt part of them and cheerfully raised her mug with every toast. Later, all the fighters were euphoric about how the lady took revenge on Duke Rodrian by throwing a cake in his face. Thus, while cursing person, they bonded a lot, and the heroine became one of the group. The mercenaries were very indignant about the shameless rumors, sincerely pitying the lady's difficult life. They all unanimously decided to correct those rumors, which amused the girl greatly. While the boss watched her attentively from a distance. After that, approaching her, he wondered if the heroine would agree to talk to him. He was also sure that his men were not as bad as the girl had initially thought. Smiling, Luna agreed with that, because apart from her family and servants, no one had received her like this. The boss liked the mercenaries' reaction towards the heroine, and he understood that. Undoubtedly, everyone had felt a spirit of camaraderie with her. Looking at the crowd, the girl noticed that as soon as they knew about her hatred for person, they immediately opened up and treated her kindly. And even now, despite their rough appearance, they seemed like people with very kind souls. Luna thought that perhaps something had happened to person in the past, just like her. At that moment, she stared intently at the mercenary boss, who noticed immediately. Smiling, the young man became doubtful. Did the lady become infatuated with his face? Surprised by his words, Luna denied it instantly, and the hero, consoled, thought he had been mistaken. In reality, the heroine was interested in something and wanted to ask a crucial question. Smiling, the boss decided that she could ask him about everything, absolutely everything she wished. No matter how much the young woman thought, she couldn't find a single logical reason for this attitude. So, finally, she decided to ask the hero and find out why he kept treating her informally. At that moment, a deathly silence filled the room, and stunned gazes turned towards them. The boss did not expect that question, and for a few seconds he was completely bewildered. Realizing it, the soldiers frantically began to insist that it didn't matter, and that they shouldn't pay attention to the boss's manners. However, Luna didn't understand how they could let it go like that. Was it normal to be so informal in the first meeting? Suddenly, the boss reconsidered and admitted that perhaps he had not been courteous to the lady. But he was not used to protocol, nor did he know how to speak correctly. Therefore, he hoped for the girl's indulgence, that she wouldn't mind his way of speaking. Simple and informal. Not understanding the string of nonsense the guy had just spouted, Luna didn't like it at all. Silence reigned again, and all the mercenaries looked at the protagonists in horror. Sighing languidly and making puppy eyes, the young man didn't understand the rejection. If he was even willing to fulfill any wish just to please her. At that moment, the heroine felt that sensation again that had invaded her since their first encounter. The boss had a beautiful face, like that of the protagonist person, and she didn't know if this feeling was because of his face, or because of something else. But whatever it was, that guy caused her deep antipathy, as he was suspiciously brazen. Seeing that his pretty face didn't work, the hero went into shock once more. With a heavy sigh, he had to admit that the lady still didn't trust him enough. Then, he decided to make her a proposal, which greatly confused the protagonist. So that she could trust him with peace of mind, the hero was willing to give her the guarantee of the former apex. Upon also hearing that by guarantee he meant an imperial endorsement, Luna was completely confused. It was a very expensive insurance, administered directly by the imperial palace. It is provided in case something unjust happens to the guarantor. Knowing that, with this insurance, the imperial family personally compensates for all damages. Why would the hero do that? The reason turned out to be very simple, and the boss just wanted to continue an informal relationship with her. Upon hearing these words, the girl, like all the mercenaries, froze in shock. At that moment, Duke Rodrian's mansion was bathed in the scarlet light of the setting sun. Standing by the window, Person was sunk in deep confusion over everything that had happened. Recently, he learned from Luna's father that the protagonist had left for Pale's lands, without clarifying when she would return. The Duke didn't understand why she hadn't told him anything. Weren't they that close? She doesn't have much money, so she will surely return soon. But worry does not leave Person. Seeing a servant in the hallway, he ordered a carriage to be prepared immediately to leave. Shortly after, the carriage was ready, and the Duke immediately embarked on a long journey. He was very worried about the protagonist's strange behavior lately. Person firmly believed that if she had been kind and good to him since childhood, everything would remain the same now. However, Luna got angrier and more upset each time, and the hero didn't understand why she treated him like that. Suddenly, the light bulb turned on for the Duke, and the veil was drawn back, revealing the true meaning of his actions. Believing she was preparing a surprise party for him, Person filled with childlike joy. Reassured by this idea, he was completely sure that Luna could never hate him. Looking out the window with hope and encouragement, the hero knew that he and the girl were the best of friends. In parallel, the protagonist felt a chill run through her, facing a sudden horror. Because of that unpleasant sensation, she felt very dizzy and lost her balance completely. Catching the lady before she fell, the mercenary boss was surprised at how pale she had become. Upon learning that she only thought Person was near, the hero was shocked by how much the poor girl suffered because of him. Opening the carriage door, the boss decided to introduce Luna to the Imperial Palace inspector, who was inside. Upon learning that she would travel with them for the next few days, the protagonist was astonished to have received recognition from the Emperor. At first, she found it hard to believe, but it seemed to be true. They only gathered known mercenaries, and no one received an advance. Even though she asked for it, the girl was perplexed. Why this treatment? The boss wanted her to speak to him without formalities. Staring at him, she decided to find out the hero's name. Did he still not know it? Besides, if they were going to travel together, it would be good to know their names anyway. To her surprise, the hero did not answer immediately, but looked thoughtfully out the window. Suddenly, he decided that Luna could call him General. She was completely bewildered. As justification, he recalled that His Majesty also called him that. Snorting and looking away, the heroine understood that he simply didn't want to tell her his real name. Looking at the boss again, she couldn't understand at all what he was thinking. Seeing his imperturbable smile and that kind, yet enigmatic look, the girl thought that, although handsome, he was really strange. If this continues, the big question is, will they manage to reach their destination safe and sound? A short time later, the cart arrived at its destination, and the protagonists found themselves amidst rocky formations. The general could not hide his astonishment at how much this place did not meet his expectations. He didn't understand what could be done here, unless they collected a couple of quality stones. However, according to Luna, the matter was mining, and she was going to excavate one of these mountains as if she wanted to get rid of it. At first glance, there was nothing special about this rock, and the hero didn't understand if there was really anything buried there. Nodding, the girl wanted to excavate today as a test, and then hire workers for a complete extraction. After defining the magnitude of the work, the protagonist decided that everything was clear now. With the stern look of a foreman, she observed the mercenaries and decided it was time to start some entertaining manual labor. The day flew by, until, suddenly, A blinding flash emanated from the exact spot where the pickaxe of one of the miners struck. With such a block of pure gold in his hands, the big guy couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Everyone was in shock and amazement upon realizing they had found a gold mine with colossal reserves. Even Luna, who knew about the existence of the deposit, was stunned by the magnitude of the find. In the original story, she sold this mountain, and now she couldn't believe the abundance of gold present here. Taking a huge piece of gold, she looked at it longingly, convinced that this encounter would change her destiny. The general, equally impressed, examined the mineral he held in his hand with amazement. The golden stone was rough, but incredibly pure. Even without being an expert, the hero knew it was of the best quality. Furthermore, such an amount of mineral did not require any kind of confirmation or analysis. The boss understood why Luna turned pale upon meeting his men. She must have feared for the safety of the gold. According to her, upon finding such treasures, there is a risk that greedy people, like his mercenaries, will stab you in the back. And since the royal family supports this trip, he hoped no one would have trouble keeping their mouths shut. The big guy and the rest of the fighters ran towards her, begging her through tears to believe them. Because, despite their appearance, they are good guys. But Luna had already verified it for herself. So she decided that, when finished, each one would receive a bonus for their work. Upon hearing this, the mercenaries grabbed their picks and ran towards the excavations. Watching them, the heroine felt tired and remembered that only one problem remained. She decided to ask the general that, when they send the sample of the stone to the capital and extract the rest, will their agreement also end? With an enigmatic smile, the hero replied that he didn't know if it would be so. Alarmed by his words, the girl remembered that she promised to pay the workers according to their merits. But isn't that enough? However, the boss didn't want to change the terms of the contract. He was referring to the termination of their agreement once everything was extracted. Smiling, he decided that their relationship couldn't end so easily. If Luna sells all this to the former bosses, the hero will be able to give her more than what is here. Confused by his words, the heroine considered the proposal tempting. But what should she do? This situation will help gain recognition from the imperial family, and I doubt she will get an equally good deal. However, making a deal with the former family was like voluntarily sticking her head in the lion's mouth. Understanding all this, Luna accepted the deal, but only under 3 conditions. Meanwhile, in the Rodrian mansion, Sarah was very surprised by Person's absence, with whom she had agreed to meet. The butler apologized and recalled that the master had left the mansion without telling anyone. The matter turned out to be so urgent that the Duke had no choice but to leave in a hurry. The lady's hands trembled at a sudden thought. Were his affairs related to Luna again? On the one hand, Butler Cillian knew that Lady Granada grasped everything instantly. If he kept lying, she would find out immediately. Wouldn't it be better to tell her everything and lighten the mood? But on the other hand, he couldn't hurt the lady's pure heart, so he had to deny it and protect the master until the end. Of course, the butler had lost hair over the Duke's follies, but the truth could ruin her engagement. In the end, Cillian decided to keep lying, thus protecting his master at all costs. First, he would clarify that the Duke had indeed left the mansion in a great hurry. However, this time, his affairs had absolutely nothing to do with Lady Palesa. Relieved, Lady Granada remembered that lately the hero mentioned her frequently. She hadn't realized she was doubting, but now everything was fine. Person wasn't like that. Sarah even had the idea that perhaps the problem was herself. But if she herself wished to marry the Duke, why so much anguish now over Lady Palesa? Lady Granada didn't know what to do if the heroine not only interested her, but also stole her heart. Cillian calmed her down, assuring her there was nothing to worry about, since she was his master's one and beloved fiancée. The reason Person visits Luna so much is that he is trying to be generous, thus honoring their old friendship. Completely agreeing with his words, the young woman decided it was time to leave. Alone and with a deep sigh, the butler feared not living to see retirement. And his master doesn't help either. Mentioning Lady Palesa out loud and exposing himself like that. Meanwhile, Luna and the general met in his office to sign a new contract. Regarding the payment, given the girl's conditions, the hero showed her the approximate sum. Upon seeing the figure on the document, it seemed to Luna that even the contract paper shone with gold. Feigning calm and assuming everything was going according to plan, internally the lady was shocked by such a sum. Her first condition was to buy gold at the highest price, and the second, that Antis would provide her with labor. The last condition was advance payment, and the general hurried to issue the check. After giving Luna the promised payment, the boss remembered that, according to her, she would go straight to the capital. Counting bills happily, she thought about a couple more things and wished to leave as soon as possible. The hero wanted to know if she had found carriages, and it turned out that Luna hadn't even started looking. While hesitating between a silver or gold carriage, the general suddenly decided to give her his. Stunned by his words, the heroine happily accepted, although it was not at all necessary. The boss was perplexed by her response, remembering that Luna also felt a team spirit. Winking with a smile, he decided that perhaps because of that, he felt more and more like pleasing her. Boiling with shame like a teapot and pretending to understand everything, the girl bolted out of the office. Smiling enigmatically as he said goodbye, the boss was eager to see her again as soon as possible. Some time later, watching the protagonist prepare to leave by carriage, the hero heard the voices of his subordinates. The mercenaries understood it was quite a big business deal, but they were perplexed by the boss's actions, since he normally didn't resort to such methods. In response, the general decided that since Luna was one of the most important owners of a gold mine in the empire, she had to make a good impression. If anyone offended the lady, there would definitely be no such deal again. Right. That was enough for the soldiers to stop thinking about it. But even the hero realized he was truly behaving strangely. Contrary to rumors, the protagonist turned out to be very meticulous and sensible. And although quite calculating, she wasn't insensitive either. Moreover, this girl knows well how to win people over, and she looks more like an experienced merchant than an aristocrat. However, the general was intrigued to know what really happened between her and the Duke. At first, it was all a joke to look like a heartthrob. But oh surprise, the protagonist fell for Luna more than necessary. Besides, the boss saw that person was useful for something. Thanks to him, he met Lady Pelsa. Shortly after the heroine's departure, an unexpected guest showed up. According to the thug, he was someone banned for Lady Pelsa. That's why they sent him to the back door. Later, sitting with an air of superiority in the general's office, Person left him speechless. On the other hand, the hero knew that only that guy could burst in like that, without warning. That's why he was burning with desire to know. What the hell did the Duke come for? After the beating his men gave him, the general thought Person wouldn't show up again. Filled with shame and fury over his words, the Duke took for granted that the hero knew the reason for his visit. Raising his voice to a heartbreaking scream, Person thought the general was going too far. So, drawing his sword, he wanted to know where Luna was. But the hero pretended not to have a clue. But the Duke knew it was a lie, because without the general's help, the girl wouldn't have gotten there. So he was surely hiding her. Hearing the order to bring the heroine, the young man was intrigued. Was she Person's property? Now he finally understood why Luna had that attitude towards Duke Rodrian. Therefore, the general was happy to report that she couldn't stand the Duke. Otherwise, why would she come here? Considering those words a blatant lie, Person demanded that Vincent immediately confess what he had done. Struck by how difficult it was to converse with him, the hero decided to tell everything as it was. Smiling, Vincent decided that his beloved friend, Lady Pelsa, had started a very special relationship with him. Seeing the Duke stagger, the general hesitated whether to continue. The hero and the girl were honest with each other, opening their souls and becoming more than friends, spending several nights together. Vincent did not clarify that he was referring to their working relationship and the nights he spent with the heroine extracting gold. In any case, Person firmly believed that Luna would never be interested in a psychopath like him. The Duke was furious, because the heroine was supposed to meet him, and he ended up with the acclaimed psychopath. With a smile, Vincent understood everything, except why they called him a psychopath. Drawing his sword, Person was sure that Luna would not do such a thing. It must be dirty tricks from the hero. And how dare a miserable person like him approach the innocent heroine, determined that Vincent was trying to deceive his friend. The Duke was not going to let it go just like that. After those words, he suddenly drew his sword and made a lightning slash, attacking the hero. However, in an instant everything changed, and the general wanted to know who had authorized Person to wield his sword on his territory. With his sword in hand and examining it, Vincent wanted to let it go this time, since he was in a good mood. Immediately after, he crushed the blade with his bare hands, determined to do the same to Person if he acted stupidly again. Paralyzed by horror, the Duke observed the remains of the steel blade and could not understand how it was possible. Considering the hero a monster and determined not to let it go, Person Rodrian hastily fled his house. At that moment, the big guy entered the boss's office, as he had heard shouts coming from there. He wanted to intimidate the Duke, like last time, but the general decided it was better to destroy his carriage. Upon also hearing that the boss planned to go to the capital, the subordinate was completely bewildered. Grabbing his cloak, Vincent pretended there were a couple of documents he had to deliver to his VIP client. Furthermore, something worried him in Person's eyes, and that's why the hero wanted to see Luna as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the capital streets were full of local aristocracy, happily enjoying their free time. Flores was drinking tea in a pastry shop with her friends, listening to their stories. When the girls' stories ran out, she decided to share the latest rumors. With a malicious smile, the lady decided to clarify that she would talk about a new wickedness of the Paleses. Amazed, the friends didn't understand how the heroine didn't get tired of causing mischief. This time, she organized a dinner at her mansion and invited Lady Granada. Moreover, Duke Rodrian was also present, and it seemed Luna wanted to show off her friendship with him to Zyra again. The young women were instantly indignant, not understanding. Could they allow her to do whatever she wanted? At that moment, near them, the carriage from the previous house, in which the heroine arrived, stopped. Seeing the young coachman helping the girl down, Flores and her friends decided to teach her a lesson. Meanwhile, Luna discovered that he was not just a coachman, but also her personal bodyguard, appointed by the general. While walking with him in front of the luxury shops, the protagonist thought about what to give her father, Emma and Lola. Suddenly, in one of the many shop windows, she saw several models of exquisite dresses. The girl remembered that she hadn't been recognized by her appearance, and maybe it would be good to start with clothes. Turning to her companion, she decided to ask him if there was a quality clothing store nearby. Sensing what she was plotting, the hero decided to clarify. There are many good shops, but does she need the most expensive one? Amazed by his perceptiveness, Luna felt like he had just read her mind. In a short time, the bodyguard took the girl to the most elegant boutique in the entire capital. It was much more luxurious than she imagined, and the protagonist hoped the dresses wouldn't cost as much as an entire house. Observing from a distance, the store employees gathered in a corner, thinking they were hardly customers. With such humble clothes, they looked more like a maid and an errand boy. Seeing that the employees didn't move even for customers, Luna thought this was by appointment only. At that moment, Flores and her friends entered and immediately noticed the heroine's horrible dress. Approaching, the ladies mocked her more, which greatly irritated the bodyguard. Moreover, they didn't understand what Lady Pelsa was doing there, since even selling everything she owned, she couldn't buy anything. Hearing the companions start to complain, Luna decided it wasn't worth paying attention to them. Standing where they could hear her, Luna firmly declared that she wanted to buy the most expensive dress. At that moment, Flores and the ladies fell silent, staring at her with expressions of astonishment. Then, laughing out loud, they didn't understand if the heroine didn't know her place, how she dared to lie like that. But thinking they were making too much noise, Luna ordered them to be quiet, as she was also there to shop. Sensing she was serious, the ladies were disconcerted and decided to watch what would happen. Seeing them, Luna bet that if she couldn't afford the dress, she would do whatever they wanted. The girls were even more confused, but Flores thought it was an interesting declaration. Accepting the bet with pleasure, the lady reminded her that she wanted to see the most expensive dress. Happy that they took the bait, Luna suggested they sit down and enjoy the view. Following her advice and sitting on the sofa, the girls thought the outcome was obvious. They wanted to see the heroine's pathetic attempt to buy a dress. They would even lick her shoes, and they wished for it. With a smile, Luna looked at the employees and asked for the dress catalog. Still seeing her as a crazy woman seeking attention, the employees coldly handed her the catalog. Based on her appearance, they assumed she couldn't afford even the cheapest dress. Meanwhile, they discussed that they should put the spoiled girl in her place and maybe even tear her dress. After taking a sip of tea and hearing that Luna wanted to see all the dresses in the catalog, the ladies choked in unison. Completely bewildered, they didn't understand with what money she planned to buy everything. It was madness. At that moment, the manager came out into the hall, attracted by the commotion, and observed the guests carefully. After receiving the check from the protagonist's bodyguard, the employee decided to verify if it was stolen, and handed it to the manager. Seeing that it was a black check, used only by the elite, he looked at it stunned. He couldn't believe it. Upon learning that Lady Palesa was his VIP client and should be served with the utmost distinction, Flores turned pale with fright. The manager immediately ordered all employees to bring all the dresses, jewelry, and shoes that might fit the lady. Seeing their leader faint from the shock, the other ladies were completely perplexed. Smiling sweetly, the protagonist decided she would return to them right after trying on the outfits. First, they presented her with this season's models, made with an innovative fabric and an absolutely unique design. Some models combined intense colors and the highest quality velvet. There was even a special dress with 100 crystals that would set the trend. The employees, who had previously looked at her with contempt, now flattered her incessantly. After trying everything on, the protagonist saw that choosing one would be impossible and bought them all. Hearing that she was also buying necklaces, shoes, and ribbons, the ladies thought they were dreaming. A friend of Flores thought Luna would return everything, and another that her check was fake. Hearing this, the heroine sighed, remembering that she hadn't told them about her gold mine. Unable to bear it, Flores shouted furiously, believing that every lie has a limit. But instead of arguing, Luna decided to remind them of the bet they had made. She wasn't one to get dirty with others' envy, so she hoped they would change their wish. Besides, there were many people, and who knows what would happen if the ladies didn't keep their word. At that very moment, the employee who had criticized the protagonist the most came to confirm that the purchases were ready. The employee added that they would wait for her at their boutique in the future. But Luna doubted it very much now. She didn't want to return to a store where customers are judged by their appearance. Promising to keep it in mind in the future, the employees awaited the lady's mercy. Before leaving, the protagonist remembered that she had to ask the losing ladies for a wish. The wish was simple. Each one had to get home from that boutique. But they couldn't use a carriage or receive help. They had to get there by their own means. Flores immediately shouted at Luna, considering it madness. Her house was very far from there, smiling and thinking that maybe she had gone too far. The protagonist devised a second option. If they insist on not leaving, then for the entire next year, Flores will be her personal servant. Luna wasn't sure she would be a good servant, but if they preferred it that way, so be it. Heading decisively towards the exit with her friends, the lady didn't want to be a second closer to the heroine. Laughing with her bodyguard, the girl decided it was also time for them to leave. Luna forced those ladies to get home in heels and an uncomfortable dress. Not for a couple of taunts in the store. It was her revenge for having killed, in her past life, the only horse of her family, and destroying their carriage. But that wasn't enough for them, as they later hired mercenaries to cause a collapse on the road to the Pales's house. Because of all this, the gentleman had to travel for business in an old cart, like any ordinary coachman. The heroine hoped he would be careful on the road, but her father considered them only minor annoyances. Moreover, the gentleman understood that his daughter was having a worse time than him, and he wanted to try to buy a new carriage as soon as possible. Even after that, the girls didn't stop. They harassed Luna and her loved ones. They set fire to her house and sent her threats written in blood. If the protagonist hadn't intervened, she surely would have died like in the original story. But she didn't want a peaceful death. The first thing Luna decided was to take revenge for her family, now that she had a power as great as money. A short time later, she arrived home, hoping with all her might that Lola wasn't still sleeping. But instead of the maid, the protagonist saw her father, who was fighting sleep with all his might. It turned out he had a premonition that his daughter would return soon. That's why he hadn't fallen asleep. Taking her hands, he smiled at the girl, thinking she must be hungry from the journey. He hit the nail on the head, and Luna sincerely thanked him for his concern. But first, she wanted to tell him something important. And above all, that her father would never have to work again. Stunned by what he was hearing, the gentleman thought his daughter was very sick and needed constant care. But apparently, the crux of the matter was that he no longer had to worry about money. Completely bewildered, the father considered it impossible unless she had become rich overnight. It turned out that was the case, and Luna decided to remind him of that land they recently bought from the gentleman. Taking a wad of bills from her purse, the protagonist confessed that it had been her, and that she had found a gold mine on that land. If exploited actively for a while, this place will generate even more profit in the future. With trembling hands, taking the bills his daughter extended to him, the father suddenly decided to apologize to her. Struck by what she heard and his dejected appearance, Luna did not expect this reaction from him at all. However, the gentleman decided that if she had been born into another family, she wouldn't have had to go through all that. Deciding that she had never even thought about it, the protagonist reminded herself as a child, walking hand in hand with her father. Hearing her sneeze lightly, the gentleman immediately became alarmed, thinking she was cold. Hoping she wouldn't catch a cold, he hastily wiped her nose with a handkerchief. The Duke understood that without his mother, it was difficult for the girl, and he wasn't the best person to raise her. Suddenly, young Luna stretched out her arms and decided that if her dad hugged her, she would surely get warm. In reality, the protagonist never thought her father was insufficient in anything. Luna always knew everything the gentleman did to protect her. That's why her father shouldn't regret anything, because the kind of girl she is now is thanks to him. Moreover, she had a small request for him, and the gentleman was willing to do anything. Smiling, Luna strongly wished for her father to become the administrator of the gold mine. She also hoped to protect the Pale's lineage name with him, as she couldn't do it while raising her. Encouraged and revitalized, the gentleman resolutely gave his consent. The next morning, the heroine enjoyed breakfast prepared by the housekeeper, Emma. While Luna praised her dishes, which she had missed so much on the trip, the maid wanted her to eat and regain her strength. Upon learning from her that her father had left early, without even having breakfast, the protagonist assumed he was going to resign. The most gratifying thing for her was that if the gentleman stopped working, the occasions to see person would decrease. At that moment, the young woman remembered that she had prepared gifts for the servants, and she would love for Emma to accept hers. The maid wasn't sure she could accept it, but Luna decided that if she liked it, the maid would prepare duck for her. Upon opening the gift box, the maid, to her surprise, saw a beautiful pendant, shining like the sun. In a state of shock, she thought that even if she captured all the ducks, chickens, and pigeons in the empire, she couldn't accept it from her mistress. At that moment, other servants burst into the room, terrified by the number of carriages that had arrived from the boutique. The heroine's name was listed as the client, so they thought it was a trick. But Luna hurried to calm them down. After confirming that she had ordered everything, the girl hurried to give the gifts to the servants. Upon seeing the contents of the boxes, the characters almost popped out of their eye sockets. Deeply shocked, Lola and Henley even lost consciousness, greatly frightening their mistress. Once calmed down, Luna clarified that it was not a dream or a forgery, much less that she had stolen anything. The servants were still confused, but apparently their mistress had found a gold mine and earned a lot of money. Finally accepting and believing the reality, Emma burst into tears, remembering how long they had looked down on their mistress and master. But now they have every chance to become the richest aristocrats in the empire. The protagonist completely agreed, although she didn't expect the clothes to arrive so quickly. Suddenly remembering the dresses, Lola and Henley decided their mistress should try them all on urgently. Emma, for her part, already imagined how beautiful the protagonist would look and thought she could now change 100 times a day. Taking several dresses, the servants ran towards their lady with shining eyes, eager to try them all on. In shock at their enthusiasm, Luna decided that the main thing was to be cautious. Stepping back towards the window, she suddenly saw a very familiar carriage approaching her house. The general emerged from it, dressed in an elegant white suit, adorned with gems that enhanced his beauty. Seeing him, the servants opened their mouths and stared stunned, and the heroine wondered, what brought the boss here? She thought the hero would be busy with the gold mines, but it turned out he had come precisely for that. The general decided it was necessary to add something to the contract, and he wanted Luna to review it personally. As she was about to send it back with those decisions, Luna suddenly felt intense gazes on her back. Sensing the tension in the air increasing, she understood that the servants would not forgive her for not inviting that heartthrob in. Walking with him down the hallway, the girl felt troubled by the simple fact that he had come to see her. To top it off, the guy dressed as if he were going to a party. A luxurious brooch, suit, shoes, and even his hairstyle, he looked like he was going on a date. Noticing her fixed gaze, the general wondered if Luna had fallen in love with him. Hearing a firm denial, he felt discouraged as he expected the opposite. And the hero had heard that the girl was interested in him. Were those rumors false? Looking at him with bewilderment, the heroine didn't understand what he was talking about until she heard the name of Antis Vincent. The hero heard that she wanted to meet that man, who was also considered a psychopath. Realizing what he was implying, Luna felt a cold sweat run down her entire body. Right in front of her was the eldest son of Marquis Vincent and representative of the Alliance, Antis Vincent. Surprise! Paralyzed by shock, the heroine thought she must have misheard. Seriously, was this handsome heartthrob, like a fairy tale prince, really Antis Vincent? In other words, the ruthless psychopath and main villain of the novel, avoided by all the imperial nobility. And persons archenemy. Trying to calm down, Luna didn't understand why he was only showing up now. If there were so many opportunities. But the hero knew that if he did it earlier, she would flee in terror, like everyone else upon hearing his name. Vincent didn't want that, not at all, because the heroine had completely fascinated him. Hearing those words, the girl became even more perplexed, looking at him with distrust. The servants listened to the conversation with interest, while Luna wondered, why did he like her? Smiling, the hero decided that, first of all, he was attracted by the heroine's hatred for person. Stunned by his answer, she thought that if he continued with this nonsense, it would be better for her to leave immediately. Seeing her get angry, Vincent became more and more tender, and decided to clarify that the thing with the Duke was just a pretext. Luna herself came up to them, not intimidated by dozens of people older than her. The heroine was not only braver than other ladies, but also quite calculating, and always ready to defend what is hers. Many believe that an aristocrat should not be like that, but all that seemed special to him, and attractive in the young woman. Blushing abruptly, Luna wished he would stop embarrassing her, but Vincent was just getting started. Her way of not giving up also seemed unique and incredible to him. With every second that passed, Lady Pilsa seemed more and more interesting to him. Meanwhile, the girl's father was at the Rodrian Duchy, gathering courage to resign. If he thinks about it, 20 years have already passed since he started working here. So much water has flowed since then, but resigning didn't seem wrong to him. The Duke's people didn't appreciate the gentleman's poverty, so they would surely be happy for him to leave. The hero, without remorse, decided to start a new life for his daughter. The gentleman was heading to his lordship's office when they called him loudly. A furious person, red as a tomato, ran to ask him if he knew about his daughter. The gentleman was bewildered to learn that Luna had met a scoundrel. The Duke, shouting and gesticulating, thought she had a new man. The father tried to calm him down. He trusted her, but Person didn't think the same. He was sure that miserable guy had tricked her into running away. No one would go out with him. Completely lost and not understanding anything, the gentleman asked who they were talking about. Not only was he harassing her, but now he was also mocking her. Upon hearing the name of Auntie Vincent, the gentleman froze. Person deduced that the heroine didn't return due to lack of money, and was surely in Vincent's territory. With a gesture, he cut off his monologue. He half believed what he heard, but now he understood that the Duke was mistaken. Upon hearing that Luna returned home, now Person is the one who is completely bewildered. Determined to check it right away, he wanted to go with the gentleman to his property. But the man had an important matter with the hero's father, and upon learning this, Person turned furiously towards him. Shouting at the gentleman, the Duke didn't understand. Is work really more important than his own daughter? Lost in confusion by his words, the man lowered his gaze guiltily and then agreed to go to the Pale's estate. Meanwhile, Luna discovered that the intermediary's sales commission was optimal. And there were no problems with the contract. The only problem was the way Vincent had been looking at her the whole time. If he has something to say, the young woman wants to hear it, because she finds his penetrating gaze hard to bear. Meanwhile, serving them and pouring tea, Lola sharpened her hearing, observing her mistress's love story. Placing the teacup on the table, the hero had wanted to ask the heroine a question for a long time. He was intrigued to know if she had made that declaration, because she was genuinely interested in him. Struck by his frankness, Luna didn't understand if that was really so important now. Vincent decided that if he found out, he would help her understand how to treat her in the future. Deciding she was tired of misunderstandings, the young woman wanted to be honest once and for all. She had used that former name in that way to convince everyone that she was not interested in Person. After a brief silence, the hero felt curious. Did she still think the same now? That is, did she still believe that Vincent was better than Duke Rodrian by every measure? Not understanding how he dared to ask that, Luna considered the hero 1,000,000 times better than that guy. Smiling, Vincent was extremely happy to hear this news. The protagonist understood that he could be too dangerous to deal with. But looking at his face, she felt that the rumors about him were pure lies. Just like the rumors about Luna, which confused and puzzled her greatly. Deciding to get straight to the point, the protagonist knew it would sound a bit unexpected. Did she want to know if the protagonist would agree to start dating him formally? Opening her mouth and with wide eyes looking at Vincent, the girl froze in shock. He felt affection for her and wanted to know more about the protagonist, starting a serious relationship. Luna was in shock and didn't understand how they had even gotten to this. She rejected his proposal, which left the protagonist very bewildered. Individuals like him, if they want something, simply try to get it with their charm. Vincent really liked the protagonist and understood that his proposal benefited her. People misinterpreted what was happening between her and Person, and those misunderstandings would never cease. Upon learning that he had even gone to the hero's mansion to find her, Luna felt nauseous. However, if they became official lovers, it would be an even bigger scandal, eclipsing the unwanted rumors. The protagonist decided to ask what Vincent gained from this, but he only wanted to have a date with her. Meanwhile, the carriage with the gentleman and Duke Rodrian arrived at the gates of the Pale's mansion. Luna hurried to the door, wanting to introduce her companion to her father. At the same time, she wanted him to keep his mouth shut and use formal language. Knowing that his father's status was ignored by everyone, Vincent decided to be very courteous to him. He hadn't heard the answer to his confession yet and didn't intend to humiliate himself. At that moment, the servants watched, convinced that their mistress would soon marry. When they came out, they saw the gentleman next to the carriage. And the young woman greeted him cheerfully. Suddenly, Person ran out of the carriage. Why had Luna left without notice? He was glad she was safe, but he was also shocked to see the hero by her side. The Duke's eldest son, Aunties Vincent, respectfully greeted Mr. Pales. He was the owner of the Antares Alliance and was helping the heroine with the gold mining business. Looking at him with admiration, the man hoped the hero felt comfortable on his estate. Upon hearing about gold, Duke Rodrian was stunned. Not understanding what it was about, grinding his teeth in anger, he decided that this guy had deceived the innocent Luna. And the gentleman. The heroine demanded that he measure his words and apologize to her father immediately. Moreover, she wanted the Duke to leave her estate, as he was the only crazy one there. Observing their altercation, the gentleman didn't understand. How had they gotten to this? Suddenly, he understood that reality had always been this way. Someone had made him believe the opposite. Finally, the old man opened his eyes. Becoming serious, the man ordered Person to stop this disgrace in front of the valuable guest. He could forgive the insults towards him, but this treatment of his daughter was unacceptable. Deciding that everyone there was crazy, the Duke thought that Luna always belonged only to him. At that very moment, he received a strong blow to the jaw from Vincent and fell to the ground. Ordering him to get up, the hero never thought the scoundrel was so unhinged. Turning with horror towards Luna, Person hoped she would see Vincent's true face. Hearing that, the girl thought that not even that blow had made him react. How many more times did she have to repeat that she hated him? She didn't understand. Moreover, the heroine was sure that he was an insensitive and selfish psychopath. She was not his property. Furious, she demanded that he disappear from her sight, right now. After his departure, the hero congratulated her on her work, but Luna knew this was not over. Upon learning that something like this had already happened, Vincent concluded that this guy was dangerous for her. However, she was more worried about the hero, who had hit the Duke's heir. In any case, she thanked him for his help and thought that Person deserved it. The gentleman walking beside them decided it was time for dinner, or Duke Rodrian would completely exhaust him. Vincent wasn't sure if he could join, but upon receiving the girl's invitation, he was very happy. The gentleman understood his mistake upon hearing that they spent days and nights together. The hero breathed a sigh of relief. The gentleman was crucial for their business. The father was delighted with his daughter's business acumen, although deep down, the gentleman regretted that she didn't have a boyfriend. Upon learning that they weren't dating, but he was courting her, Luna dragged Vincent. Ashamed, she didn't understand how she could have said that. Hadn't they broken up? The gentleman was already imagining things, and she didn't want to give him more reasons. Protecting her from the wind with his cloak, he apologized. He wasn't well either. Despite his unpredictability, Vincent saved her from Person. Time to relax. Hearing a compliment, he thought he was drinking too much and suggested they sit down. Sighing with difficulty, she didn't understand why she was making excuses. Could he be kind? At first he thought about having fun, but then he understood that he wanted to be courteous by her side. The protagonist hoped it would be like this more often, and tried to think of something other than beauty. It is rumored that he is a psychopath, but Luna noticed that Vincent reasons better than others. That's why she didn't understand. How could he so stupidly lose to Person in the original story? After his defeat, he was expelled from his family and began to commit horrible acts. But the more the protagonist learned about him, the more questions arose in her mind. Perhaps Vincent, like Luna, decided to take a different path from the original plot. Suddenly, he approached, and she thought they were about to kiss. But contrary to expectations, the hero only adjusted her collar to keep her warmer. He also decided that they should return to the estate before the cold intensified. Deeply embarrassed by her thoughts, she swore not to be seduced by his pretty face anymore. Meanwhile, Duchess Rodrian began to worry about Person's delay. Suddenly, she was informed that Lady Granada had arrived for an unexpected visit. Hurrying into the hall, Sarah greeted the lady with due respect. She hadn't seen the young master for a long time and hadn't even received news from him. The Duchess remembered that her son had gone to Pales's estate that morning and found it strange that he hadn't notified the lady. Horrified by the news, Sarah fell to the floor with a gesture of resignation. Later, during tea, the Duchess discovered that person had been visiting Lady Palesa behind her back. As a mother, she felt ashamed, but she couldn't believe that Luna was capable of deceiving the hero. And using him. Sarah thought that Luna, without any shame, was still clinging to person, who already has a fiancé. The Duchess knew the rumors in high circles and believed the accusation was as unfounded as these. The lady shouted furiously, blaming the protagonist for everything. She must be plotting something sinister. The woman was so disappointed by his irrationality that she doubted if the marriage was worth it. Meanwhile, Duke Rodrian finally returned home. The lady wanted to run to him. But according to the maid, the young master needed to be alone. Ignoring this and the Duchess's shouts, she ran to his room. Upon entering and seeing the bruise on person's face, Lady Granada didn't understand what had happened. Dismissing her with disdain, the protagonist only wanted to be left alone. Immediately after, he began to be indignant about having to save Luna from the clutches of that scoundrel. Stunned by his words, Sarah didn't understand how everything could have turned out this way. Lost in confusion for being blamed for everything, the lady hated the heroine with all her soul and decided to kill her. At that moment, the Duchess arrived to them, shocked by the young woman's actions. After apologizing for her rudeness, Sarah wished everyone good night and headed for the exit. Observing her carefully, it seemed to the woman that the girl had transformed into someone else. The next day, Luna suddenly decided to visit Lady Granada. Vincent knew that in the highest circles she was considered a talented, kind lady. And beautiful. At first she wasn't so hostile, and the heroine even thought they were friends. But now everything was different, and Luna wondered if it had been like this from the beginning. Or if everything gradually changed because of person. In any case, Vincent believed she had nothing to worry about, as he would always be on her side. However, in front of the entrance to the Granada mansion, she became a little nervous. The hero insisted that, although he trusted she could manage alone, she could call him if she needed help. The butler guided Luna to a guest room where Sarah was already waiting for her. Seeing her dejected state, the protagonist thought she wasn't well. What brought her here without even warning? The lady wondered. But Luna had announced her visit in advance. Sarah had no idea. Suddenly, the lady turned pale and began to collapse to the floor. Running towards her, the protagonist prayed that she would be all right. Clutching her head, Sarah thought she must hate her. Screaming in pain, she abruptly turned towards Luna, not understanding why she was there. The heroine was in shock, and Lady Granada looked her in the eyes with a radical change. Sarah judged her as a devil. She thought Luna only came to mock her. The heroine noticed she wasn't hearing anything, completely absorbed in her delusions. Thanks to her experience with Person and Lady Florrie, she knew it was useless to talk to her. Only one way out remained. And Luna remembered how Lady Granada had humiliated her with money. Now she planned to return 10 times more, hoping they wouldn't show up again. Sarah screamed in fury. She only wanted to hear that the heroine would meet Person in secret. Luna had the impression that the lady was waiting for her to do just that. Not wanting to see her again, the heroine left the room with complete calm. Reminding herself that she must hate her, Sarah ordered her knights to arrest the young woman. Luna ran towards the exit, not understanding how everything had become so complicated. Vincent was waiting for her at the door, congratulating her on her great work and taking care of the rest. The soldiers lunged to attack, but the hero easily dodged them. He considered them slow and neutralized one of them with a lightning kick. Snatching the sword, Vincent wielded it quickly, defeating the knights one by one. Turning to Sarah, he wondered, is this how guests are received in the Granada Duchy? Blue with fear, the lady began to scream, blaming Luna for offending her. Laughing, the hero thought she was insulting herself with her behavior. Then he headed for the exit, wanting to leave that place with the protagonist. Luna was in shock from what he did to the soldiers, but Vincent saw no problem. Upon leaving on the street, he decided to express his gratitude for the help. The girl was frustrated not to have anything to pay him with, but the hero did it because he promised to always be on her side. Later, sitting in the carriage, Luna was still worried, as Lady Granada loved spreading rumors. Not only do they already consider Vincent a crazy psychopath, now they could call him a murderer. But the hero remained calm, as he didn't care at all about the opinion of others. In reality, the protagonist felt no relief, and her head was a chaos of thoughts. When she saw how Sarah's face twitched at her words, Luna felt like a true novel villain. The hero deduced that the reason for her distress was that she judged his actions based on the opinion of others. After a brief silence, the girl reflected on what she heard and smiled, feeling great relief. There is no reason to fear resembling the original, because she must live her life as she herself desires. Remembering urgent matters, she wanted the hero to take her to buy a carriage. To her surprise, they arrived at a building she had visited before. When Luna was looking for the gold mine, she heard the owner of this place talk about Antares. But when she went there, she discovered that they were not engaged in that business. It turned out that Vincent knew nothing about it, and they didn't require identification. Realizing they were scammers, the girl wanted to leave, but the hero decided to stay. Only there did they sell luxurious carriages, and besides, who dared to use the name Antares? Luna was already quite annoyed by her fight with Sarah and didn't want more problems. However, Vincent assured him that he would resolve this matter cautiously and peacefully. Upon entering, they saw the owner, who was attending to another customer at that moment. He says that if the man doesn't sign that contract, he will regret it very much. We will have to pay a fee, but we are reliable people. There is nothing to worry about. The owner wanted to know where to find mercenaries, and Vincent knew he was talking about Antares. When he turned and looked at him, the owner screamed in horror and collapsed on the floor. He quickly clarified that he only recommended a good group and never used Antares for money. Vincent kicked the table, shattering it. He considered it a lie. Sometimes geniuses like that appear. She wondered if the carriage salesman would want to know what he planned to do with them. Minutes later, they had a luxury carriage for free. Good move, don't you think? Still in shock, the girl didn't understand what the hell was going on in her head. Before, they saw a desperate customer. He needed mercenaries urgently. Luna understood that he resembled her the first time she came here. Then Vincent gave him a note from him and sent him to Antares to look for people. In the novel, the hero is only described by the bad things, like a bandit and a bloodthirsty dog. But if you slowly start to learn about his virtues, the day will come when all prejudices dissipate. Finishing their day's business, the heroine decided to thank Vincent for his help with dinner at a famous restaurant. But the hero suddenly decided it would be better to eat at Baron Pale's house, where he loved the food. Seeing his lady's boy coming to dinner again, the maids started to fuss. They wanted to prepare a lavish table, but Vincent decided that, arriving unannounced, bread and soup would be enough. Luna wanted to offer him something more exquisite and was willing to wait a little longer. Taking her hand, the hero came here to spend time with her in a quiet atmosphere. That's why he thought a simple dinner would be more than enough. But Luna knew he was just trying to get closer. She could have dinner at home, making a sad puppy face. Would she really abandon him like that, her savior? In shock at such audacity, she agreed. The maids were horrified. Grabbing their mistress from both sides, the women decided to prepare everything grandly. Meanwhile, Baron Pilsa arrived for an audience with Person's father. It turns out the Duke already knew that Lady Pilsa now owned a gold mine. The Baron was surprised that the news reached him second. Person's father was somewhat annoyed to find out so late. Only now could he congratulate him. He also regretted signing a contract with other merchants. Suddenly, the Duke became curious. Would the Baron sell the mine right now? The man appreciated the offer but couldn't decide anything. The mine belonged to his daughter, but Person's father thought it was even better. This way, the young lady would break the deal without judgment. Staring intently at his lordship, the Baron refused to betray his daughter like that. The Duke was indignant. How could he entrust something so serious to a lady with no idea of the world? He considered the Baron pathetic and naive, easy to manipulate. But the man resisted. Letting out a laugh, he decided to resume the talk later. Then Baron Pilsa clarified. He wished to resign from his post. His daughter entrusted the mine to him, and now he wanted to focus on his lands. That's why he asked the Duke for permission, but his lordship preferred to choose his successor first. The conversation ended for today, and Luna's father left, bowing to the lord. His lordship, with fury in his eyes, ordered Person to be called immediately. As soon as his son entered, the father slapped him with all his might. Ordering him to stand up, the Duke wanted to know how the cotton business was going. Upon hearing about the difficulties, he asked if Person knew that Baron Pilsa's daughter now owned a huge gold mine. Terrified by the news, the young man couldn't believe it was true. The father didn't understand. If he knew everything, why hadn't he done anything? He considered his son miserable. Because of him, they had lost a gold mine. So now, the Duke would give him one last chance. He must force the Baron to sell the mine, by any means necessary. Meanwhile, Luna's father was in his office, and Person went straight to him. Seeing the bruise on his face, how could the Baron not understand what had happened in days? The protagonist was hurt by their last encounter, but still believed the man cared. As a child, his father scolded him a lot, and he would hide on the Pales estate, where he was always welcome. Thanks to those memories, Person had been able to endure everything until now. How touching! And now he hoped the Baron wouldn't deny him help, like in the old days. Hope is the last thing to be lost. He wanted the man to grant him management rights over the Pales family's gold mine. What audacity! His father had never been as angry as when he found out the mine hadn't ended up in his hands. On his knees, the protagonist begged at least for the sales rights or a share of the production. Trying to calm him, the Baron was already tired of repeating that he had no decision-making power. What frustration! In that case, the protagonist thought he could arrange a meeting between them. And Luna. This is getting interesting. He believed that Vincent deceived her, and now she avoids him for no reason. Enraged by his words, the Baron abruptly ordered Duke Rodrian to shut up. After spending so much time with him, the man already accepted how rude he could be. After receiving his refusal, Person decided that, in that case, the Baron left him no other choice. Until he accepts the Rodrian family's proposal, he cannot take a step outside this house. The next morning, the heroine was calmly drinking coffee in her living room, and Vincent was doing the same in front of her. Dad still hadn't returned home, and the heroine was starting to worry seriously. Suddenly, she received a letter informing her that the Baron was fine and was at the Rodrian mansion. The girl didn't understand why he would send such a letter if he was really fine. What was the point? She decided to go there and find out everything, while the hero could return home. But for Vincent, the Baron's safety was paramount, and he also decided to go. Upon finding them later at the mansion, the Duke's butler seemed very bewildered. The hero suspected his attitude and thought it would be good to look for the father on his own. In agreement with him, Luna decided to go to his study first. Approaching the door, they heard the Baron's shouts, who didn't understand how Person dared to send such a letter to his daughter. While trying to calm him, Duke Rodrian heard a noise behind him and upon turning saw the heroine. Without giving him time to speak, the girl hit the young man in the face with all her might. Shouting furiously, she was in shock over his attempt to take her father hostage. But suddenly, Person decided that the strange one here was only her. He didn't understand her coldness, nor why she had turned into another person. As a child, after another punishment from his father, the young Duke cried next to an old oak tree. Seeing him like that, Luna approached and extended a hand to help him. He was born into a noble family, dating back to the founding of the empire. Person was the only heir, and because of that, since childhood, he suffered abuse under the pretext of discipline. Because of this, he often escaped to the neighboring Pales estate and befriended his daughter. Since he was young, he wished the heroine would always be with him, as she and her father were his only close ones. Only thanks to Luna's support could he survive those hard times. That's why he couldn't ignore her attempts to break their friendship and associate with that scoundrel. The heroine couldn't deny that she knew Person's suffering well. She was his escape valve, and the hero constantly sought her out. Even Luna herself had to be the villain, and was despised so much that she died in silence. It was all for Person's happy life, and now she wonders, when can she escape from him? After listening carefully to the Duke's words, Vincent already felt nauseous. Isn't it strange to insist on friendship, even when the other person doesn't want it? If Person truly appreciated the heroine, he should disappear from her sight as soon as possible. Upon hearing that he was the only villain in her life, the young Duke fell to the ground, desperate. Suddenly, the Duchess burst in with her servants, trying to understand what was happening there. Seeing her son kneeling before the hero, she was completely paralyzed. Looking closer, she also noticed a bruise on Person's cheek. The servants recognized Vincent and assumed he had hit the young master. What Luna feared most happened, and now she doesn't know what to do. Wanting to calm the waters, she declares him her beloved hero. Everyone present was completely shocked to hear it. Not even the protagonist herself expected to dare so much. He, embracing her with a smile, agrees to play along. Nodding with understanding, the Duchess does not insist on asking. Now intrigue consumes her. Why did Lady Palesa come? Upon hearing that she is visiting her father, who still hasn't returned, the butler becomes uneasy. He deduces that there is a misunderstanding. The Baron came of his own free will, but the father denies it, recalling Person's blackmail the previous night. After listening to her carefully, the Duchess offered him her personal apologies. She wanted the protagonists to leave now, to meet and discuss everything later. As a mother, the woman was concerned about her son's condition and hoped they would understand. After seeing her father off in the carriage, Luna planned to punish that bastard later. Vincent knew that detaining someone was illegal and he could report it, but it would be less effective. First, he had to prepare, and for that, he decided to call his acquaintance lawyer. Thanking him for his help, the protagonist apologized for her recent words. To prevent rumors from spreading, she decided to take responsibility and explain everything. They cannot continue pretending they are actually dating. Oh yes. At that moment, she heard her father's cry, asking the lovers not to pay attention to him and to continue talking. Later, when the Baron returned, the maids greeted him cheerfully at the entrance. The head of the family was happy to announce that Luna and the gentleman would officially start dating. To celebrate, the maids decided to prepare a festive reception. Seeing the shock in his eyes, Vincent sighed sadly, believing he agreed to help him. Not understanding, the maids thought he wasn't expressing his emotions and that he loved her. Seeing them and her father, Luna understood that she had no choice but to agree. Soon there was a family dinner, and the Baron told his son-in-law stories from his childhood. Knowing that she had always been kind, Vincent decided that this was what he liked. Suddenly, the hero's family's personal lawyer, named Lawyer Trust, arrived. Approaching Luna, he hoped she would agree to a peaceful settlement in the matter. Although the lawyer was unaware of what happened to the gentleman, he was willing to compensate for their losses. Vincent deemed it necessary to clarify that his client was Lady Palesa and the culprit, Duke Rodrian. Upon learning that it was not his lord who harmed the protagonist, Lawyer felt great relief. Deciding this couldn't go on, Vincent wanted to introduce Luna to another lawyer. The lawyer, laughing, thought it was a joke, as they urgently needed his help. Moreover, there was no other lawyer in the Empire capable of dealing with the hero's character. Vincent looked at him furiously, after which the lawyer immediately hid behind the carriage. Observing this, Luna trusted the jurist's capabilities, as the gentleman himself had recommended him before. Therefore, she agreed to entrust him with the job and decided to discuss everything during lunch. After learning the details of the case, Lawyer thought there would be no problems. It was obvious that Person was trying to illegally detain the Baron. Luna feared the Duke would sue them, but the lawyer believes he won't. He already had experience in something like that, when Vincent broke all the young Duke Person's bones as a child. The lawyer began to recall the case in detail, and the hero decided to put an end to it. Luna saw Vincent so helpless for the first time, although he always seemed unbreakable. However, seeing him now, she felt great relief. The lawyer clarified that the situation that time was also complicated, but thanks to his skills, everything turned out well. Considering him very reliable, the Baron was surprised to hear about all the broken bones. Then, the lawyer remembered that time his lord was almost hit in the head by a stone thrown by a young person. At that moment, Vincent squeezed the glass so hard that it broke directly in his hand. He felt very embarrassed by the conversations about how immature he was before. The Baron was happy to meet him and fully trusted the hero, because he was the one his daughter loved. After this, everyone gathered decided to toast to those two loving hearts. With his eyes popping out in surprise, lawyer needed to confirm if his lord and Lady Palesa were together. After receiving confirmation of the news, he turned pale and collapsed on the floor. Luna immediately ran to him, hoping he was all right. Giving him a thumbs up, the lawyer assured him he could call on him whenever he wanted, and for whatever he needed. Vincent thought it was time for him to stop paying attention to Lodger and return to the table. But instead, the heroine decided to take advantage of Lodger's proposal and turn to him. She wanted to know more about Vincent's childhood. The hero wanted to object, but curiosity overwhelmed her. Couldn't she know more about her beloved? Feeling the power in her hands, she decided it was too late. So, before her beloved got even more curious, she hoped Vincent would allow her to finish dinner in peace. Aware of her position, the hero didn't dare even lift his head and nodded silently. At that moment, the lawyer had no doubt that he was facing a true queen. A little later, Luna briefly got up from the table and went out to get some fresh air. She was in shock from what was happening and didn't understand why there was such a fuss about the appearance of her beloved. Suddenly, Vincent approached her, affectionately covering her with his cloak. Hearing her indignation, the hero understood her and even envied her a little. She didn't understand why he was so obsessed with the idea of dating her. Besides just wanting to have a wonderful date with her, Vincent was happy to see that idiot face of person. He decided he had as many unsettled scores with that scoundrel as the heroine did. So, she decided to find out what the hell had happened between them in the past. He loved it when the lady was so insistent, as if she were really interested. Vincent was ready to tell everything, but decided to do it a little later. And now they had to return, as the protagonist had been absent from the table for too long. The next morning, Luna woke up much later than usual. It turns out the hero didn't stay for breakfast and left at dawn for urgent matters. The maid Laura handed her mistress a letter he had left her. The letter said he had left due to family matters and, if necessary, Luna could consult with lawyer. He also apologized for last night and hoped the girl didn't hate him. Laura thought the young master really liked the heroine, given his concern for her. With a lawyer nearby, Luna felt safe, but for some reason, something worried her. At that moment, the butler gave his lordship a report on what happened at the Rodrian mansion during his absence. Lady Palesa came looking for the Baron. They both argued heatedly and even slapped the young master. The Duke considered his wife's decision to let them go idiotic, knowing it was because of her love for her little son. Throwing the glass in the butler's face, he considered person and all his subordinates brainless creatures. Later, by his order, the Rodrian family's personal lawyer came into his presence. Named Paul Khan, the Duke ordered him to force those third-class beasts of Palesa to pay for daring to mock the Rodrians. Thinking it wouldn't be difficult, the lawyer wanted to know what punishment would his lordship prefer for them. The master didn't care and just wanted to crush those miserable people. Some time later, Luna received a letter from the Rodrian family. They sued the Palesas for trespassing on their mansion unannounced, attacking the heir, and damaging the Duke's reputation. As if that weren't enough, they also alleged that the Baron was absent from work without permission. The situation is more complicated than it seemed, and lawyer already knew who their family lawyer was. Polkin is famous for using dirty and petty tactics, ruining the lives of many people. The protagonist didn't know what to do, as high society continued to treat her family coldly. If her reputation worsened further, everything could end very badly. Honor is not bought with money. Lawyer knew it would be difficult to beat them, but there were still possibilities. In their statement, the Rodrians deliberately omitted the case of the illegal kidnapping of the Baron by the young master. Therefore, the first thing was to bring this incident to light. The problem was that the Duke's family had surely already gotten rid of all the evidence. Now there was no other way out than to sue His Excellency to get out of this predicament. They had no evidence, and Luna understood that you cannot create what does not exist. Thinking about it, a brilliant idea suddenly occurred to her. Rumors about the trial spread very quickly, and even the Emperor sent an investigator to confirm some facts. Instead of a clear response to the statement, the Duke's side kept insisting that the Baron was absent from work. Because of this, the duchy suffered losses, and they wanted to demand compensation for the damages. Understanding that they had to hurry, Lawyer met with Mrs. Sheen, who worked as a maid in the Rodrian house. The woman decided to get straight to the point, and the lawyer clarified that it was a judicial dispute. Interrupting him, Sheen recalled that the gentleman now dedicates all his time to the trial and spends every day with a lawyer. If any servant leaks information outside the mansion, this will not end well. However, lawyer didn't need information, but help sending a love letter. The woman needed to send a letter and receive a reply. As payment, the heroes had already bought her a mansion in her hometown, where she longed to move. The heroes were serious, and lawyer understood that only Sheen could be entrusted with something like this. That night, the maid stealthily snuck into Person's room, who was sleeping soundly. Hurriedly leaving the letter on the table and preparing to leave, she didn't hear the young master wake up. Running towards the maid, he hoped that this letter had been sent by Luna. After reading the letter, he pressed it against his heart, wishing to reunite with her as soon as possible. On the day of the trial, aristocrats from all over the empire flocked to witness the outcome of this scandalous story. Everyone knew that Duke Rodrian's family was the most powerful in the empire. A lost trial for a poor baron. Waiting for both to prepare, the judge announced the start of the proceedings. First, it was decided to hear the arguments of both sides, and the Pales family's lawyer was the first to speak. Lodger recalled that, on the day of the incident, Person visited the baron in his office to talk. The young lord demanded that the rights to the newly discovered gold mine be transferred to him. But he was rejected. After all his requests were rejected, the Duke could not contain his anger and locked him in his office until the next day. Therefore, they demanded a sincere apology and compensation for moral damages from the Duke's family. Everyone was shocked by what they heard, and then the word was given to his lordship's lawyer. Standing up from his seat, Polgan decided to clarify that all his words were a blatant lie. That time, he and Person discussed work matters all night, because the Baron was a terrible employee. He had been working on the estate for a long time, and his performance was terrible. The young master, who knew him for years, took pity on the Baron and wanted to teach him something. But the man simply became enraged and refused to perform his duties. In the end, Person had to finish the work for him. Instead of thanking him for the help, the Baron turned the hero into a vile criminal and sued him. As proof, they presented the written statements of the Duke's household servants. The judge could accept these testimonies, but he didn't understand why the servants didn't come in person. Smiling at him, Polgan expected understanding, as they did not come out of fear of the Baron. As lawyer suspected, this man was using very dirty tactics. He not only gave false testimony, but also manipulated the feelings of his opponents. But attention! The Baron also had an ace up his sleeve, even though the servants were being watched. Contacting Shane was easy. She had already resigned. With the opportunity to speak, our hero would present irrefutable evidence. By evidence, lawyer meant the written confession of young Rodrian. Upon hearing this, Person was in shock, and the rest were petrified. Unable to believe what he heard, Polgan turned to him, completely confused. The young Duke, furious, didn't understand how Luna could betray him like that. After receiving the letters, the judge meticulously reviewed their content. Person described in detail what really happened and sincerely apologized. Seeing that this differed so much from the Duke's version, Halgan didn't know what to think. After staring intently at Person, the judge wanted to confirm if the content of that letter was true. His lordship's lawyer instantly tried to make it seem like that message had been fabricated by the Baron. Suddenly, shouting loudly, the protagonist remembered Luna's words about forgiving him if he confessed honestly. And now he didn't understand why she had betrayed him. Demanding silence, the judge was ready to deliver the sentence. After reviewing the declaration and the evidence, the testimony of the Baron's side was considered justified. The Duke's side must assume responsibility for the incident and pay the compensation requested by the Baron as soon as possible. Furthermore, since they gave false testimony, the court fined the Duke's family 1 million gold coins. The people around were in shock at what they saw and considered the decision fair. They couldn't believe that a noble family in the duchy was capable of such a disgusting act. Seeing Luna calmly walking away with her father, Person ran after her. He wanted to know the reason for such betrayal, but the guards subdued him at his feet. First of all, the protagonist just wanted him to shut up once and for all. And as for the betrayal, their friendship had ended long ago, and that was her business. It is true, she used him because the protagonist sincerely hated that man. Seeing this, many nobles remembered the rumors that Lady Palesa was making advances towards him. However, everything turned out to be the opposite, and it was not clear. What would the Duke do now? Later, sitting in the carriage, Luna expressed her enormous gratitude to lawyer for winning the trial. The lawyer was also delighted with the lady, not expecting her to reject Person so coldly. Understanding everything lawyer had done for them, the Baron didn't know how to repay him. But for the hero, it is enough that Lady Palesa and her gentleman love each other until the end of their days. Moreover, they hadn't finished yet. They had a move planned. Luna was happy to be able to give her father a worthy home and believed that only good things would happen there. She also had a small request for the lawyer. Later, Polkin appeared before his lordship with a report on the lost trial. The young master didn't realize that he was being used. And there was also a henchman of the Baron on the estate. The Duke decided that what was done is done and that there was no point in giving vain explanations, so he dismissed the lawyer. Upon calling the butler, he learned that Person was still locked in his room. If before he lay apathetic, now he doesn't let anyone near him and destroys everything. Understanding that his son was gradually recovering, the head of the family was happy to finally be able to raise an heir. So he ordered a servant to watch him, and also to take care of the death of that useless lawyer. That same day, Polkin suddenly bid farewell to life due to poison in his tea. Meanwhile, tormented by anguish, Person decided he would never forgive Luna. Every day Mom called him from the other side of the door, but received no answer. Later he learned about the Duke's order. Do not give his son food until he leaves the room. So she called her trusted maid, wishing to ask her for an urgent favor. Before giving details, the Duchess gave her in advance one of her most valuable jewels. In return, the maid would have to disobey her lordship's order and, at an opportune moment, bring food to the young master. Rumors of the Duke's defeat in the trial spread quickly, but the corruption and his conduct in the courtroom did not become public. No matter how much they tried, it was impossible to hide that news. Very soon this news reached Rosemary first, who was shocked to hear it. This lady was a rising star in high society, who, at first glance, had no flaws. She was also the official heiress of the Marquis, who became famous thanks to maritime trade. Rosemary herself considered her life boring, envying the ladies who had fun at receptions. She, on the other hand, spent all day studying, and all because of a damned wretch. Initially, she had an older brother, Vincent, who was supposed to be the heir. But he had left home a long time ago. Reluctantly accepting it, the burden of being the heiress fell upon the young woman, and the task of surpassing Duke Rodrian. However, Rosemary herself only wanted to buy delicious cakes and beautiful dresses. And then she finally learned from a friend about the recent trial between the Baron and the Duke. All the rumors about Lady Palesa were only bad, but it turned out to be the complete opposite. And as if that weren't enough, Person also wanted to get rid of Luna's beloved. Upon hearing that beloved referred to Vincent, the girl almost choked on her tea. But her friend preferred not to give details and ran off to tell everyone the news. Rosemary couldn't believe that Psychopath could have a beloved. She urgently called her butler William, who was startled to see her running away so fast. Upon hearing from his mistress that there was an even more serious problem, the servant became more alert. Reflecting on the young master's beloved, he considered those rumors very strange. Rosemary ordered an investigation into this, and for that, the butler called the lawyer. The lawyer considered the matter very delicate and didn't understand if he should reveal someone's private life like that. So he decided to tell the lady himself what he had seen and heard. In shock, the girl couldn't understand how her brother could have done such a thing. With every word from Lady Palesa, he gets lost, becomes uneasy, and always tries to look good. Rosemary couldn't believe she had managed to tame the hero. Suddenly, Lawyer thought she might meet the heroine in person. The girl was horrified, imagining how terrible the person was who made her brother kneel and obey. However, the lawyer would swear that Lady Palesa was a very kind and gentle person. Determined to trust him, Rosemary began to think of a suitable place for the meeting. Now Luna was busy moving. And if she put a nice house up for sale, they could meet naturally. To do this, the girl decided to sell her best house at the lowest market price. And as a gift, a land document in the reconstruction area would be perfect. Some time later, the protagonist was calmly drinking tea in the living room. The secretary candidate, personally recommended by Lawyer, was due to arrive soon. The Baron eagerly awaited this man to guide him in managing the mine. The protagonist arrived at the estate, not believing he had secured an interview in a noble family. His name was Tane, and he feared being kicked out just for being a commoner. Seeing him at the door, the protagonist instantly recognized the man. They had seen each other not long ago at the carriage shop, and thanks to Vincent, they had been helped. Tane reiterated his gratitude for that time, and the interview began. It turned out he had worked in the mine for almost 20 years, but it had recently closed. In addition to physical labor, he was also responsible for hiring and managing workers. And he even knew how to process simple documents. Many employers believe that only extraction matters in a mine, but Tane was sure of the need for a systematic approach. Different mines, different extraction methods, and safety guarantees required qualified specialists. Seeing the thoughtful faces of the Baron and the lady, the hero understood that he had gone too far. Since nobles usually don't like that. After reflecting on everything heard, Luna hoped he could start working tomorrow. She was moved that he was not only an exceptional person, but also proud of his work. Therefore, she made a decision without even hesitating. She decided to triple his salary compared to his previous job. After experiencing strong shock, a blush appeared on Tane's face, and he lowered his gaze in shame. He was grateful to the Baron and the lady for having such a high opinion of him. The hero would work as a secretary for the first time and decided to do everything possible to help them. Smiling, the Pele's boss hoped the secretary wouldn't be shy about teaching rigorously. From the first day, with hard training, the Baron very soon regretted his words. Things were going even better than Luna imagined, and now her father wouldn't worry. She also dedicated herself to work with Ahinko and acquired dozens of rocky mountains in the Empire. The novel did not specify the exact location, but there had to be another hidden diamond mine. Moreover, the heroine finally went shopping to get a new estate. Next to the first house, a man named Cleo was waiting to show her everything. He found an estate that met the lady's requirements and decided to start with the closest building. The first building was especially beautiful in the warm season, when flowers bloomed around. There wasn't much space around, but the house was very good, and its atmosphere matched the Duke's estate. Upon hearing the price of the building, the lady's companion Laura was horrified. The protagonist was also very surprised, and didn't understand why so cheap. Before, that price would have been unattainable, but now Luna had earned a lot of money. Understanding that the price was incredibly low for that estate, she decided to buy it right away. In deep shock, Cleo didn't understand the reason for this sudden decision. He expected the lady to at least take a look at other mansions. Before, Rosemary had ordered him to take Luna to the Rose Mansion. She never thought she would choose the first house. He had to invent something urgent. He started begging her to see another house, which was better and bigger than this one. Luna didn't see the need, but she had to give in to his insistence. Soon they arrived at the Rose Mansion, and upon hearing it, Rosemary was horrified. She was not yet mentally prepared for that encounter, and pretended there were renovations. The butler reminded her that she had time, while the heroine explored the area. And she decided to watch her from the window. Seeing Luna getting out of a luxurious carriage, Rosemary was impressed by her beauty and elegance. However, the lady decided not to be carried away by appearances and to see the heroine with her own eyes. Seeing them talking to Cleo, Rosemary felt the urge to eavesdrop on the conversation. Meanwhile, Luna didn't understand how roses could bloom in such cold weather. It turned out to be a special variety, capable of withstanding low temperatures, which only grew there. Rosemary couldn't hear anything, and her patience reached its limit. Taking the gift, she ran to personally receive the guest. Meanwhile, the protagonist was absolutely delighted with the beautiful place for tea. Deciding to find out the price of the estate, she discovered that the house cost only 100,000 gold coins. It turned out to be half the cost of the first house they showed her. Only the roses around the estate were worth more than that price, and it gave the impression that the house hid serious flaws. Seeing her expression, Cleo thought the price was excessive and offered to reduce it by half. Now Luna was completely convinced that this was a blatant fraud. After all this, she lost the desire to buy the cursed building. Bewildered by her words, the hero was speechless. He knew he wouldn't get such advantageous conditions anywhere else. Was even that price too high? However, for the protagonist, on the contrary, the incredibly low cost was disturbing. Seeing their argument, Rosemary doubted whether the rumors were true and Lady Pilsa was a devil. But the lady decided to move forward and find out how Luna tamed her brother. Suddenly, the protagonists began to apologize to each other. It didn't seem like Luna was threatening or manipulating him. Maybe she wasn't so evil. Suddenly, the lady heard that they planned to continue inspecting the house. Running, she stumbled and fell, but the protagonist managed to catch her. Apologizing for her abruptness, Luna hoped she was all right. Smiling, taking her hands, Rosemary wanted to have tea with her. Later, the protagonist discovered that she was the owner of the Rose Mansion. Greeting her respectfully, Luna introduced herself to the young woman. She didn't understand why the lady seemed so familiar, but upon learning her name was Rosemary, everything clicked. The lady heard that the heroine was close to Mr. Rodrian, which horrified Luna. She understood that their relationship was so terrible that she wanted to erase it from her life. Glad that someone finally understood him, the heroine wanted to know more about the mansion. Meanwhile, Rosemary didn't understand. How could she be so charming? She was also surprised by the amount of malicious rumors about Lady Pilsa, as if everyone had suddenly gone blind. Looking at her, the lady felt envy for her brother for the first time. She wanted to propose to Luna to hire her employees, who had already been taking care of the estate for some time. The heroine, in turn, hoped that Rosemary would allow her to visit sometimes with questions. The lady decided to visit more often, as Luna seemed an incredibly good person to her. The protagonist had never seen anyone treat her so well. She even felt uncomfortable. In the novel, Rosemary did not have an important role, so little was known about her. Be that as it may, Luna already understood that she also wanted to be friends with her. After 3 hours, she returned home from the young lady's conversational hell. Rosemary fluttered around her, bombarding her with questions, suggestions, and compliments, deciding to have dinner first. Suddenly, she saw Lodger at the door of the house. Later, sitting with him in the carriage, she shared her impressions of her meeting with Vincent's sister. She also discovered that Rosemary was the family heiress and had been actively involved in trade for a long time. It was a shock to the protagonist that the hero personally rejected the inheritance and handed it over to his sister. In the novel, everything was very different, and the position of heir always belonged to Vincent there. Gradually, the plot was changing, and now what to expect? The mystery intensifies. Luna knew that everything changed when she realized his true identity. A shocking twist. Therefore, now she needed to question the lawyer about Mr. Vincent. The truth will come out. The novel told the story of Sarah, a beautiful heroine happy with her fiancé Person. A fairy tale. Or not, Sarah's allies were good and noble, her enemies evil. The typical story. But the real Sarah was very different from the one in the book. And if the others are also different, Vincent confronted the Duke, as in the original story. But he wasn't the psychopath they painted him as. The hidden truth. Then why did he torment Person as a child? What is the secret behind his cruelty? She knew it was a delicate topic, perhaps linked to the family dispute. A murky past. But according to Lawyer, there was no apparent reason. What is really going on? For Mr. Vincent, Pearson was just a punching bag to vent his anger on. They called him a rabid dog, and the lawyer almost died trying to sort out his problems. The protagonist completely changed after meeting Luna. The lawyer was fascinated by the power of love that transformed his master. They returned home a bit late, and the protagonist ran towards her father. The gentleman will soon depart to take care of the gold mining. And today they had a farewell party. Running towards him and hugging her dad tightly, Luna knew she would miss him terribly. She hoped that later he would take a vacation and visit her new Rose estate. He found it hard to get used to the idea of having to leave his daughter alone during this time. Raising his glass, he was glad that everyone could gather today. Although the cold winter is approaching, the gentlemen hoped their hearts would always stay warm. And abundance. The party was a resounding success, and the next day, the head of the family prepared to leave. Calling Thane aside, Luna secretly handed him a small bag from her father. It was money for clothes and other things for the father, and for the secretary himself as well. Thane wanted to buy it with his money, but the heroine insisted, and he decided to spend the funds wisely. She also gave him a special letter, which he had to deliver personally to Vincent. Thinking it was a love letter, the secretary was surprised that such an important thing was entrusted to him. A few days later, the gentleman and Thane arrived at the Order of Antares. Upon learning of the guests' arrival, Vincent ordered them to be brought before him. Luna's father was genuinely happy to see him for the first time in a long while. The hero proposed that they stay at his country house within his lands. Accepting gladly, the gentleman and the hero left that same day to see the property. Remembering everything Vincent had done, the heroine's father felt an enormous debt. The hero saw no reason to worry. After all, they were important clients. The gentleman remembered that his daughter had moved to an estate with a garden where roses bloomed all year round. Vincent was surprised to learn that the estate was near the imperial palace itself. Understanding which house they were talking about, the hero wondered, what is Rosemary plotting? Thane pulled him out of his thoughts. He wanted to deliver a letter from a lady to the young master. From his expression, Vincent sensed a love declaration. But the hero doubted it very much. Deciding to play along, he brought the envelope to his lips, thinking Luna was very shy. Upon hearing this, the secretary blushed and stepped aside, while Vincent, pleased, opened the letter. Luna was happy to report in it about her victory in the trial, and hoped the hero would take care of the gentleman. Her father is a very sensitive person, and in learning, one can be stricter. But he will not forgive rudeness towards him in other situations. Furthermore, Luna decided that now that everything was over, they should also start gradually getting rid of their fake relationship. Of course, this will surprise everyone, but it was necessary to inform them somehow that they were going to separate. The heroine thought that Vincent was not taking their relationship seriously and decided that enough was enough. After finishing reading the letter, the hero had the impression that he had been stabbed without a knife. What a twist! He understood that, despite everything, ending like this would not be easy at all. Shortly after, Luna received an invitation from Rosemary to host a party. The heroine knew that if she did, surely no one would come. After reading her face, the lady did not want to bother her friend at all. So, if Luna did not object, she could invite her friends to the party. Thanking her for her concern, the protagonist decided to fully trust Rosemary. The next day, Emma and Lola arrived at the Rose mansion. At the entrance, they were greeted by the butler Carlton, along with the rest of the staff. Knowing that he and the others would take care of her, Luna decided to let go. She also introduced her proteges, delighted to meet their new colleagues. Lola and Emma shyly greeted the mansion's maids, who seemed cautious. The butler thought of first showing the young lady the room she would use. But Rosemary had already shown her everything, and Luna wanted to choose the rooms for her people. All the maids in this mansion stayed in a common room on the ground floor. And Emma and Lola could settle there. The protagonist did not want to ignore the rules of this house, but she hoped they would provide separate rooms near her. With a grim face, Carlton was forced to agree to his lady's request. Lawyer was nearby the whole time and was very disconcerted by the atmosphere surrounding him. And the grim faces of the maids. In the following days, Luna prepared for the party, placing high hopes on meeting new people. Lola also tried her best to make her lady dazzle with her beauty. Long before the party began, Rosemary arrived unexpectedly. Seeing her, Luna immediately felt calmer. Before the celebration started, the lady wanted to gift her friend some lace gloves and a custom-made bow. Looking closely at Rosemary, the protagonist realized they would have matching ornaments. She was very grateful and never imagined receiving such a gift. Lola completely finished the lady's appearance, and just then, Rosemary's friends arrived. Upon going out, Luna met Elaine Donovan, the Count's daughter, and Corinne Ironall, the Viscount's daughter. Both ladies hoped they would be allowed to bring more people to liven up the party. And her friend heard there would be a reception at this estate and was eager to participate. Looking at the carriage, the protagonist burned with desire to meet Rosemary's acquaintances. Stepping out of the carriage, Lady Florrie respectfully greeted the owner, then looked at Luna with astonishment. They also invited Lady Sharon, who was part of this lady's clique. From their expressions, Luna understood that they were unaware of who was organizing the evening, determined to be an exemplary hostess. She thanked them for their visit and wished them a good time. Sensing that something murky was happening, Lady Florrie decided to reveal the heroine's true face to everyone. With a furious look, Lady Sharon refused to continue being part of their schemes. After seating the guests at the table, Luna was organizing something like this for the first time, hoping everyone would like it. Corinne was thrilled to see limited edition cookies from the Diaz pastry shop on the table. Suddenly, the heroine knew she had a letter from Tane and decided the best thing was to read it now. After apologizing, she got up from the table, hoping the girls would continue chatting without her. Determined to seize the moment, Lady Florrie wanted to clarify that Lady Palesa was deceiving everyone. After hearing her insults and slander about Luna, the girls were shocked. Corinne couldn't believe it, and it seemed very strange to her that she would speak like that behind the heroine's back. Florrie understood them and remembered how Luna had tormented her in the boutique. Lady Sharon was also there that time. The young lady expected her support. At that moment, Luna returned to the table, apologizing again for her absence. Seeing the unease on the girls' faces, she was completely perplexed. Suddenly, Rosemary was intrigued. Why did Lady Florrie fall when Luna entered? If the protagonist really harassed her? This was her big chance for an apology. The protagonist was stunned by how limited her way of thinking had been. Is she, besides offending an innocent person, trying to ruin the whole party? Responding with an angry shout, the lady declared her accusations in the store as truths. Luna remembered how Florrie and her friends mocked her, calling her a beggar. If they hadn't insulted her, the protagonist wouldn't have responded in the same way. Then, the lady concluded that Luna was even flirting with Lord Rodrian, but in that case, empty words would not be enough. They needed proof. The heroine demanded proof that Lady Florrie had the right to treat her like a beggar and accuse her of something. Frozen in deep confusion, the young lady turned to Lady Sharon seeking help. But her friend refused to help, thinking that she and the others were just following the lady who ran everything. They fought, and the other ladies tried to calm them down. What drama! Ordering them to be quiet, Luna wanted both of them to leave the mansion immediately. Sighing heavily, she understood that the party was ruined. Smiling at the remaining girls, she apologized and decided it was better to end it there. To her surprise, they looked at her with understanding, and Rosemary even wanted to apologize. Karen also deeply regretted bringing such a name. Realizing that all the rumors about Lady Palesa were false, the ladies were shocked by the injustice. Luna decided that perhaps, this time, she should explain all the misunderstandings that had occurred. She decided to trust her new friends and tell them the long story of her life. After listening to her until the end, the ladies were shocked by everything she had to go through. Realizing they believed her, the protagonist felt great relief. Rosemary considered the rumor about Person and Luna's relationship absurd because she knew she was dating her brother. Paralyzed by shock, the protagonist couldn't believe she was aware of that. In turn, the lady was horrified to have let such nonsense slip out. Abruptly getting up from her seat, Luna decided to go inform the servants that the tea was finished. She hoped Ramesri would not refuse to take a walk with her. Alone with her, the protagonist now understood the reason for the lady's kindness. Could it be that Rosemary was simply worried because a devil got close to her brother? It turns out that at first, she was moved by curiosity and wanted to get to know her brother's beloved better. However, Luna turned out to be such a pleasant person that she became ashamed of her lightness. Rosemary was afraid to admit it, thinking the protagonist would consider her the same as everyone else. In reality, she sincerely wanted to become friends with her. Luna understood that the lady was not to blame for anything, and she herself involuntarily felt resentment. She apologized for having started investigating everything so hastily. Luna was a little embarrassed to say that, but she wanted Rosemary to see her true self. Moved to tears, the lady decided to write in her diary that the protagonist was a true angel. But Luna only wanted that, from now on, they would be completely honest with each other. They returned to the table and discovered that the girls were discussing next month's reading. The protagonist felt very grateful when she received an invitation to attend. Suddenly, Karen changed the subject and remembered one of her friends who had recently started a relationship. Turning to Luna, everyone was eager to know how her relationship with Vincent had begun. The protagonist remembered that they had only recently started dating and was embarrassed to talk about it. The ladies did not insist, but all subsequent conversations revolved around romantic relationships. Later, Luna was happy to hear Lola say that the party had been excellent. Due to bad memories of her debut, she feared meeting people and was always worried about maintaining good relationships. But now she has confidence and sees that not everyone hates her. It was great meeting the girls. And the best part, she has a friend. She ordered the maid to contact the jeweler right away. She would give a gift to Rosemary. Sarah read the letter in horror, unable to believe what it said. Upon learning that visitors were arriving, she looked out the window. It was her friends. Lady Florrie was crying inconsolably at the entrance. Lady Granada understood nothing.